Ah,
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I am back with Ananta due to popular demand, and also we said we would record another video. So hello, welcome Ananta.
hello. Thank you. Lovely to be here
Yeah.
again. Yeah.
So I thought that we could just pick up from um, where we left off with the story, um, just as what happened to you when you got out of prison. So for those that didn't watch the previous video, Ananta had a big energetic awakening when she was in a Japanese prison. And yeah, and I'd be interested what happened once you got out, like how you dealt with that, how you integrated that into being in society. I mean,
Wow.
you went in 3.5 years, you're like a completely different person when you come out. No person.
Exactly that. The one who went in didn't come out. Let's put it that way. I mean, absolutely didn't come out. So if you are a long time, like not relating and not speaking with anyone, there's no relationship, then every role you play falls away. Because you are no longer, I mean, I didn't see a man for 3 years. So then there's no woman, so there's no friend. So you're no longer in the role of a friend. There's no, there's no brother. You're not a sister. There's no daughter. All the roles are gone. You're just all the time what you are aware. So I think that was a big component to why this shift easily happened in such a big way, because there were no roles as well. That's one of the components. However, when I got out, so it was just as big a shock as going in. Absolutely massive shock, like tremendous fear because I'd gone from being solitary confined in complete and utter total silence. So I'd kind of opened into the whole space. So the whole space in the cell was me, right? So getting moved from there, I got moved straight away into a cell with 10 in Tokyo. Waited there for a couple of weeks with 10 people all talking at the same time, all in different languages. So this was, it was really. Anyway, when I got deported, which is a whole story in itself, arriving back in England, broken teeth, hair all broken, and
Why were your teeth broken?
because they deteriorated, they just, the stress levels were so high that many things, the immune system, whatever, I mean, I'd lost whatever, I needed a cap, I needed this, that, they just didn't see a dentist for a few years. And I didn't eat for many months when I was in there at all. I couldn't eat and I couldn't sleep. So, but that changed after a while, which is a whole nother story, which I've told many times in different interviews. So that can be found. Um, so I got out, and the absolute, I mean, my eyes were like this, and one eye was constantly dripping a tear. And this tear was the tear of truth. And it was just a constant drip. I couldn't stop it, but it was the tear of truth, like from the depth, whatever I was seeing, or, I mean, I was in such a deep, placeless place that it was impossible to have a conversation
Mm.
about anything. of this world, because you know, my brother picked me up at Gatwick, and
Goodness. But even being in an aeroplane must have been
well,
crazy.
I was in cuffs when I was put on the
Oh,
plane,
oh,
right?
for everyone to see, it to like be walked down. Like,
Yeah, I was put on the plane. I was, and then the cuffs came off when I sat in the thing. But the woman next to me, she got it. She really got it. She realized what was going on, and yeah, it was, you know, there were all these restrictions, and there's a whole story to that, but I don't want to use our
yeah.
time. So I've come into Gatwick, and I've come back to meet the parents, but it's like I was full on tripping. I was absolutely tripping. Like the world is, everything I see in the world is unreal. You know, when we think about the statement, the world is an illusion, everything I could see, I could just see right through it. Like none of it had meaning. And I was in a completely different state of being that I couldn't possibly converse with anyone who would even, I couldn't speak about it. I was just, and I also didn't know what had happened. I didn't know
Mm.
what this shift, I couldn't name it. So I just knew that I was somewhere else. And so I just I couldn't converse, I couldn't relate, I couldn't. So I locked myself in a room in my father's house. It took about 4 months where I just went into solitude in that house, and I
Mm.
couldn't. So there's a whole story around the whole eating thing, which I have told in different interviews, which was a big thing because I couldn't eat without having my eyes closed and going absolutely to heaven in a state of absolute, in a state of immense gratitude. You know, it was the only way that I was able to eat. And, you know, the food would go in my mouth, and I spent like, because we had 6 minutes to eat in the prison, and I just couldn't, everyone was like a mad dog, like, and I just couldn't get into that. So after a few months, I was taking like 1 teaspoon of food and close my eyes and start chewing and chewing and chewing and chewing and chewing and going with it until it became liquid. And in that process was the immense gratitude of where it originated from, how it was grown, who carried it, who cooked it, until it arrived on the plate. So by the end of the 6 minutes, every single meal, I was in absolute, and then they give the signal, stop, and you have to give all the plates. And there's this sound that I'll never forget, like the silence of the lambs. And I would just be like these sounds, and they'd just take all the plates, and I would just be like in this state, and I'd open my eyes, and they'd all be staring at me. But I was in a state of absolute bliss. And
Mm.
this was 3 times a day, right?
Mm.
So it was like there was a river of greed where the layer of the dimension where there is all greed and hatred and projections which were flying all around the space because you're in silence, but there's a loud, it's loud in there because you can hear everyone's thoughts, everyone's feelings, everyone's projections. It's like a river of all that stuff is there. So I was going out the door
Mm.
into a dimension of absolute gratitude, bliss, heaven. So 3 times a day there. So I remained in that state. And so when I got out, I couldn't sit at the dinner table and eat with it was my father and his new partner. I couldn't sit there and eat with them and talk about what the news on the TV and da 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 da. It was just impossible. It was like, so I was trying to pretend to play the game of being someone in a family, a daughter, but at the same time, I was like, this is unreal,
Yeah.
get me back in the cell.
Yeah, you're like falling through all the cracks. That's really interesting because that actually happened to me, but just in a different way. Like I found it very difficult. This one thing, well, there was a few, but one of them was sitting at a dinner table and eating with people. And still now, I don't particularly like going out for
Took
dinner
me
with
two
people.
years. The only way I could do it was turn around and face the wall with the eyes closed.
That's so
It
amazing.
took 2 years.
But when
And
we ate together, when I came
I,
to your house, I don't know if you remember this, we actually ate together and we both sat in silence and like you gave me bread with this amazing sandwich. Do you remember?
oh, vaguely, yeah.
And we sat in silence, like, and I was like, oh, thank God she doesn't want to talk either. So I was just like, oh, yes.
Just going on a journey, like,
Yeah,
oh, the connection, because this is your first connection with anything
yeah,
is with
yeah,
the food, and how we connect
yeah,
with that is how we connect with everything, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, it took 2 years. I couldn't, I mean, I would have to excuse myself, I'd have, when people kind of invited me to thing, I'd just say like, you know, I just need to close my eyes and face the wall. And they were like, okay. I could hear them whispering like, she'll get over it. But for me, it was like an absolute sacrilege to disconnect with the food and go into these nonsensical conversations. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's so sweet.
there was that. That was a big thing. And it took 4 months before I could look in the eyes of a man.
Wow.
Couldn't. I'd look down at the floor, because we had to look away if someone else passed us in the prison.
Mm,
So yeah, I had ongoing nightmares, always thinking that I'd wake up in the middle of the night feeling like the guards were looking through the window, you know,
right. Yeah,
and the paranoia, the high alert of being all the time like switched on, aware of everybody else's thoughts,
yeah,
you know, and it was fucking intense because I was processing everybody's thoughts that they didn't
yeah,
even know they had. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
So, and I really felt like I can't relate to this world. I was seeing people running all over the place, going nowhere, all running in a rush, going nowhere. And I thought, what are they doing? Like there's a planet turning in space and all rushing to get somewhere and there's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
So it was
And
difficult.
was there um a lot of trauma from
Absolutely.
in the
The body
body
is absolutely, yes. Yes. And
and paranoia, like the police would come for you again, or
no,
that?
not like that. But I was being watched 24/7.
Right.
So when you're being watched 24/7, you're always in accordance to, like,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? So for that to drop off took a while to just feel like there's, there's no one watching. So
Mm.
I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I'd have nightmares of like people peering through the windows and stuff. But anyway, that took a few months. But the wonderful, wonderful thing is, well, after 4 months, I looked in the eyes of a man. It was amazing, something really amazing that I'd like to mention about the incredible, incredible intelligence of our system. So I didn't bleed all the time I was in there. I didn't have periods. And 2 weeks, no, like you never know when someone's getting out. I didn't have a date to get out. But you see that people in the factory, they go for a meeting with immigration, and about a couple of weeks after that, they disappear. They never come back. So you know that one day it's going to happen to you, and it's always on a Monday morning, right? So, and you don't know what happens after that. So the moment that I got called to this immigration visit, I started ovulating. And 2 weeks later, I started bleeding. Right? My body knew I was getting out. It's just amazing. I mean, I was shocked that I was getting out because it was too early. I actually got out earlier. So when I got out, and I couldn't look in the eyes of a man, because for 3 years I hadn't felt like a female. And now when a male come into the room, I had all these like, I had nothing coming up for 3 years, like nothing. There was nothing to trigger the personality, except, there was, but there wasn't. Like, now that's such a long thing to talk about. I don't want to go in that. So, as there'd been a long period of time where I was just aware, just being here now, aware, there was no feelings of like shy or any of these things. The moment that I started to see men again, I started to experience feelings of shy, and all the feelings that come, like when a man looks at you, these feelings started coming up, and I was like, ooh, ooh. Like, ooh, what's that? What's that? Because I could see that I'm not doing any of that. I could see that I had no control over it. And I could see that it was nothing to do with me. And yet here I am experiencing it. So after 4 months, there was this shift in my energetic shift in my whole system, where it was just time. And I looked up and looked in the eyes of a man, and whew, the whole thing came. The whole thing. Oh my God. I mean, I was a walking orgasm, by the way. I was like, because that's actually what we are, right? So my system was very much in a tantric living experience. So when I say that, I mean at one with all that is, like energetically merged with all that is in this, like, so the density on a certain level, the density wasn't there, and this was blissful and orgasmic, right? And it was just naturally like, and at the same time, there was trauma in the damage in my shoulder, like from doing a repetitive movement, working on a machine for 3 years, making sewing shirts, school shirts. So this was like absolutely incredibly painful. Like the nerve was damaged down my arm, and there was a lot of physical damage. So these different levels, there's damage on the physical, and that has a mental, emotional component. And then there was absolute total freedom on the level of what we actually are, that was in an absolute total meeting with all that is. I mean, what we actually are is deep sexuality.
Could you elaborate a little bit more on that as to what exactly you mean? Because I think a lot of people only know sexuality as ejaculation, and as bonking.
Well, that's a great pity, isn't it? Um, that's a great pity. So what I mean is the creation of all that is, the creative source of all that is pure sexuality without the act. So it's already making love with itself. It's already making love with itself before the sexual act of these bodies. So it's already creating all the time. It's created all this. It's created all that is, all the trees, all the animals, all the birds, every form is a pure creativity out of the lovemaking of existence, I like to call it. So this energy is pure creation. So when we talk about, say, Tantra, it's actually called something. It's called Tantra vision, the Tantra vision. However, it was there before it was called Tantra, right? Someone had to call it that, but it was already there, of course. Just as you and I, woman and man, is here, but it was here before it was called that.
Yeah.
Right. So the Tantra vision is a way to explain it and is a vehicle to I don't have the words. So when we are in the sexual meeting, when we come together in the sexual meeting and there is a complete merging, a meeting of what we actually are, then the separation is gone. And the energy is just one movement. And as it moves as one movement, it then merges with all creation and all that is as the lovemaking of existence. So there's a certain point where the experience of two people making love disappears into one, and then into the one, the all that is. And it's like a doorway. Through the doorway of the sexuality between two that lets go into the one, opens into the cosmic orgasm. All right. And this is the ultimate lovemaking of existence, godliness, making love with itself, I like to say. Right. So where was I? Where did I start saying that for?
Well, you were saying that
Spoon.
because
Yeah. Where's my spoon?
you just totally
Saying.
tranced me in the like cosmic orgasm, and then you have to go to before.
So I've got it now. I've got it. So why I was speaking of that, because I was saying on one level, I was absolutely a walking orgasm. So all that is as godliness itself. And on another level, I was all damaged and there was suffering in the body mind. So I think the point, an important point, is that this was all here at the same time.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Right. So this is an important point. Because actually, the truth is, it is all here at the same time, right now, depending on where we are residing and attending to. And yeah. So what did I do with all of that is a really good question. I saw that comment. What did I do with all that? And is there spiritual bypassing? I love that comment.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish I had my
Oh yeah,
screen.
somebody commented about that, didn't they?
Yeah. And I love that comment because, I don't think I could ever be. Not that I was being accused of that, but I'm very much a body type, right? So what did I do? Within 6 months, I was back in India, back in Pune.
Oh, yeah.
Rocking it, right? But
Yeah.
I went with all this damage. And I went back to Thailand and met with all my friends who knew me before. And now I'm meeting them again, but the one they knew before wasn't here. And there was no way that I could explain where I was. So I didn't talk about it at all with anyone. There was nobody I could talk. It's not like now there's all these non-duality meetings and there's all this satsang. No, there was nobody I could talk about with this.
And did they notice a difference?
Sure. They notice, I mean, I did talk about deep things, but I think it was often too deep. I had this one tear dropping. You know, someone would just say something. I remember I'd go with my mum for lunch somewhere, and they'd just say something, you know, on the superficial level, and I would like penetrate it to its depth. And they would be like, okay, like she'll get over it, you know.
Yeah.
So it was kind of seemed like I had a lot of healing to do because I was saying like really weird stuff, you know. But I needed to speak, but there was no one to speak with at such a depth.
Yeah.
So I
You
didn't
didn't know
speak.
any non-duality teachers. You knew Osho.
There was none.
No, no.
The only ones I knew was Osho was my master at that time,
Yeah.
right? And we're going back 28 years. I got out in 1997,
Mm.
right? So there was no awakening for the ordinary being at that time. There was no, so I couldn't even recognize that that is what's happened here, right? Because I still had all this pain and trauma. So how could I possibly think that that was anything to do with enlightenment, whatever that was,
Mm.
right? But I knew I had to go back to Pune. I knew I had to go. But what happened was I came across Gangaji at that time. And as soon as I started listening to her, because she was speaking in a very direct, very clear, very direct, as soon as she started speaking, I knew she's speaking, this is it, this is it, this is it, this is it. So that was, you know, and I just became then obsessed with listening to Gangaji all day and all night. And I went to Pune and I went into a 4-month rebalancing training. And this training is about a very deep type of body work. I was training in that body work where you're training to go through every part of the body to release trauma. You go very deeply into every part of the body. It's got rolfing is one component of it, and structural integration and meditation. And so you have to go through everything in that training. Every part of your own body has to be gone into deeply and opened up and released. So I was in that for 4 months. And I can tell you that at one point there were about 6 or 7 people standing around while I was on the table, and they were working really deep in my body. About 6 of them standing around with pillows while I was punching, spitting, kicking, like wow, absolute catharsis, releasing all this, you know, the deepest of anger, all of it getting released, and you're learning how to work on another. So I was working on others in the same thing, and this was just like, you know, and I didn't tell anyone in the training, and halfway through the training, you have to stand up on the stage naked. Like you might get to keep your pants on, but otherwise you've got to stand on the stage naked and have the whole training read your body, you know, which is about 30 people or something. And I stood up on this stage and I just broke down because I hadn't said anything, but now they were starting to read my body and they could see, you know, like it was like everything was all in the top part of my body. I had shoulders, but I had no legs. I had nothing to stand on. My legs were gone because I've been working on a machine for years and not allowed to walk anywhere. So no use of the lower body. And anyway, they started speaking the reading it, and I just broke down, and then I told, and then there was a whole big, it all had to come out, which was fantastic. It was fantastic. I had to find my voice again because my voice was so small and so low, like hardly could speak, you know, because I hadn't spoken. So I started screaming all of that out, and so I went through a real but of course, Osho Commune is very much it's for that. And it's also 3 amazing meditations a day. You've been there, right? Yeah,
It's phenomenal, Osho Ashram. I know there's a lot of controversy around him, but for me, for healing, going there, I found it really phenomenal.
it was
I mean,
incredible.
it's very different, and some people might not agree with the tactics. Like I told someone recently about my experience, and they were like, "That's abusive," but I found it phenomenal. It like really,
Absolutely,
like I
absolutely. I
didn't
didn't know
see it as
left or
yeah,
right, you know.
yeah,
I never was interested in all the stories.
no,
No, I'm telling
just
a story now,
what it does
but I
here.
didn't care. I didn't care
Yeah.
about all the stories. I knew that what I needed was there. And it's a very tantric field as well. You know, there's a lot of dance, there's a lot of, you know, shouting, screaming, catharsis. Who is in? I had to do the who is in again, that group that I mentioned in the first video. And for me, this time it was an absolute piece of cake. I was laughing all the way through it, that people were like having a problem being silent for 5 days. But anyway, and it's very spiritual in the sense, you know, you remember the White Robe Brotherhood?
I don't remember the white robe.
I mean, I won't go into all of that, but it's incredible, incredible spiritual, and like really, you're just in a meeting with God, and um, slowly, slowly, it was gradual that I started to understand more clearly the shift that had already happened. And I was working on bodies, and I was, you know, and one of the things about the stories, you know, I saw a few comments about why the story, da da da. But one of the things I like to say about that is that we are all unique. We are all that which we're pointing to. We're all, you know, absolute godliness looking through a pair of eyes. We're all that. And yet we are individuated in a very unique expression, and there are not two the same. And it's the very story, the journey that we walk through and we process through, where we have a unique experience of realization. And as that integrates our unique personality, we become a unique expression of this message. And that is why we see so many messengers, or call them teachers, whatever you want to call it, but the messengers of this message, with a very different angle, with a very different shape, with a very, very different flavor. And that is very much to do with where we've come from, how we've grown, and nothing can repeat that. And that's why it's so beautiful, because you come to understand people in a very unique way by what you've yourself experienced, right? And the same for me. I come to understand so many things through all this challenge and difficulty, that I can immediately look into someone and see where they are and see where they're free, right in the midst of where they're totally and absolutely suffering and stuck. And, you know, it's like it gives you credentials that you can't get, or qualifications that you can't get by going in a training program in a university.
Yeah,
It's the
totally.
university, right?
Mm.
So yeah, and then I like to say that when I started sharing, actually, you know, there was a couple of years I was in Pune. I was doing all this work with people, and amazing to work with people in their deep, deep stuff and all of that. And I just could not anymore support of the story of me, the me story. I mean, I know I'm telling a story of me here, But there's a very big difference. There is a very big difference. I know I don't need to explain that to you. But when I had people on my table, like coming on my bodywork table, and they would be going through, say, something that happened to them when they were 3, some trauma that happened, and they'd be reliving some kind of abuse, and it would all come out, and I'd be like working with it. It became very obvious to me that unless they came to the point of recognition of who they actually are, that would be never ending. There'd be another part of the trauma and another part of the trauma, and then it would just keep going round, because it's the me story. It all happened to me. And if that identity is not seen through, then there's no way to experience all of that in freedom. So in the midst of all of this, I came across Delano, which some of you might have heard, who was in Pune, and she was the only one around at that time. She was giving satsang intensive, and yeah, I mean, it came my way, of course, and I went to her, and she's just amazing, amazing, crazy, amazing, wonderful, very unique, incredible, powerful, crazy, amazing. And the very first, she has a particular way. You can't ask a question for the first 9 investigations. And in the first investigation, when I walked in there and she does the direct inquiry of who am I, as soon as she started to speak it, I was like, bang. It was what she calls the drops into the ocean. The drop dropped, you know, and it was just absolutely, absolutely, absolutely confirmed. You know, I dropped into the ocean, and I could not stop the tears, crying and crying for hours and hours and hours. But this is not you know, needed for awakening. This was just absolute relief of the confirmation of knowing what I've always known, being confirmed, and seeing and seeing and seeing and seeing all the moments of the life that this was already known, because it is already what we are. And so it is already known. And as it was being confirmed and confirmed, I just was opening and opening and opening into the all that is, into absolute bliss, absolute. And it's very, very tantric. This is tantric. You know, tantra is not all about sex and feathers and dressing up and yoni massage. It's the whole of existence in a lovemaking with itself, all inclusively. So there's a very important point I'd like to share about the all inclusively, because I was in a relationship at that time. It was my first relationship. It was my first relationship after I got out. It wasn't my first lovemaking. It was my first long-term relationship. And I was living with him at the time, and he was so angry that we were both in this Delano thing together, and that I'd opened into he was so pissed off because he wanted it. And he was so angry, and so he rejected me. We were living together, and he rejected me, and he said, "If I am loved, then I don't need you, yeah?" And he just pushed me away. And so all the triggers of rejection and all the personality trigger and all the female trigger, and everything got triggered in my system, while at the same time I was in a total expanded, ongoing experiencing of absolute Satchit Ananda. At the same time, there was a touching of a core wound. And all the feelings of rejection and all those things were all moving through my body. And there was the question like, you know, what am I going to do with this? What's this? How do I deal with this? Because there was nobody to answer that question. Delano wasn't interested in that question. She didn't deal with the world at all. She was totally removed from the world. She didn't deal with relating in any way. So there I was with this contradiction, apparent contradiction, living with this guy who was, you know, ongoing. There was drama. And here I am like, how does this two come together? And I did ask her, she couldn't answer that question. She wasn't interested. And so that became my living inquiry. From that moment, it became my living inquiry. How does all this come together? And from that moment, the integration of all these levels started very consciously. Because I will say that between the moment I got out of jail and this moment, there were 3 human years. Not that years even exist. It was just only one moment, right? But in the world of time, there were 3 human time years. In that was this confusion. And so from that point on, I was the living inquiry. And from that point on, I started, I'm circling back here, because those people on the table that were having these traumatic releases of the little me, from that point on, I started to work with them, to bring the recognition of who they actually are. I would sit for 15 minutes before we started the body work. I'd sit with them on the table and do a direct inquiry of who am I, bring them to the recognition of so there was no separation between what I am and what whoever it is. So it was a direct seeing, and then I would say, okay, let's start then I would start working on the body. And as I was working on the body and all this stuff would come through them, I'd be throwing their arm around and say, look, see what is not moving, something like that. So these pointers started to happen, and they'd be having these recognition. And then it came to a point where they were like, can we do more of that?
More of that.
Can we do more of that inquiry? Because they were having these like experiences of awakening. They were waking up on the table and they were like, can we do more of this? Like this, can we do more? So I started offering sessions of only that, like an hour of that. And then they started telling their friends, and then the friends started coming. I mean, there's a whole story to that. But so it was, there's a whole story that goes with that, which I've told many times, where I received the knowing that I'm made for this. I'm made for this delivery. I'm made for this work. All of what I've ever been through is for this. And there's no other point to it other than this. I'm here to serve this. And through what I've lived through allows me to meet anybody in the depth of pain, in the depth of trauma, in the and work with it in a way where I absolutely know beyond all doubt, always, that they are free and they can know it right now, always. And the integration of all that. So I want to stop here and just let you, yeah.
Sorry, let me see what comes up. I mean, it's such a phenomenal story. I can see, um, yeah, I can see how like you were made for this. Like it's really phenomenal.
No doubt, no doubt. You know, so when people say to me, oh, but I haven't had this big explosion experience, da da da, I say, you don't need to. It's already done. I already did it. That's why I can easily take someone into recognition, you know, and I feel it's like that. I feel it's like those who came before us, you know, like the Ramanas and the Anandamayi and Nisargadatta, those who came before us, they did that for us. They sat in a cave for years and years in silence. So we don't have to. You know, they paved the way and they prepared the ground so that we could more easily receive, you know, and it feels to me like the evolution of that is that now you and I, ordinary beings, are able to transmit this to more and more and more ordinary until it becomes mainstream.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, that's such a beautiful idea. They've already done it for us because there is no separation.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly. Yeah. So it's been done. And, you know, like I bow to that. I bow to all that's been done. And somehow moving in this life now, you know, arriving as an elder, which is even a shock, you know, it's a shock, really. I never expected to age. What's that? You know, but arriving as an elder and then seeing more and more young ones starting to pop and starting to teach and seeing how it's become so easily available.
Yeah.
And still there are different levels of depth because this, as you know, when you pop, this realization is the beginning. And it just deepens and deepens and deepens and deepens. And it's an endless deepening, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Nisargadatta says, which I always really love, that for the personal consciousness, whatever that is, but it means like the manifest consciousness, its role is to infinitely expand. So
Exactly.
it's really that
Exactly.
on the human world or whatever that is, like it's always
It's
this
always evolving,
expanding. Yeah.
always growing. Yeah. And that's beautiful because there's no arrival point.
No.
Yeah. And we used to, this the thing is most of, I think, our work is removing illusions because it's only the illusions that are in the way of what already knows itself. Right. And it's the same. Yeah, go ahead.
And in your experience, you find that people often have to do trauma work before or settle down the person before, or do you feel like that doesn't matter? It's really just dependent, it's karma or whatever you call it, as to whether.
I would say that if it's not done before, it will need to be done after. In most cases, it's not a rule because there are no rules in this, right? But the more work we've done before, once the recognition is there, then it's easy to integrate. It's much more easy. But if there hasn't been any work before, and then there's the recognition, it's like, oh, now all this stuff is now got to become conscious, you know, all the ways and behaviors and patterning and all of that.
And you find that people, so if that happens, they have the pop and then they have to do the shadow work afterwards or the trauma work afterwards. Do you find that there is a lot of falling asleep and waking back up again, or you find that they're pretty clear throughout that?
I see most of the time is that people go in and out. So, but that's because they base it on experience. So they're having the experience, and then like they're wearing the personality identity, and then they're seeing, and they're wearing the personality and they're seeing, and this identification kicks back in until they're just seeing right through it. Yeah. So, but in that, I often meet with people that they base it on having the experience of no identity. So, of course, you know that it's not even about experience, and it's all here at the same time. So identification can be triggered in any moment, all at the same time that you're totally free. Yeah, so it's all coming together at this. It's neither this nor that. It's neither in nor out.
Yeah. I think I have more questions there, but they're not springing to mind instantly. And one comes. What is the way that you tend to work with people, or is it really dependent on who you see and their
Really
story?
depends on, I mean, I can just immediately see the level of understanding. You know, when someone comes and they start speaking, the language always gives it away, even if the language is correct.
Yeah.
There's even if the words are correct, there's something about the energy in the words that's either alive or just intellectually spoken. So, you know, when people come, it's like I'm taking them in absolutely, completely, taking them in, knowing them because we are one, you know, so completely taking them in and then penetrating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do you find this? So from the tradition that we sort of came from, the Indian tradition, there is a lot of focus on having a guru and committing to a guru. And I see the importance of that, but it really doesn't translate well in the West. Like, because it's a massive cultural thing in India, the idea of a guru, whereas in the West it doesn't quite translate well. Um, but I see the importance of it in regards to the commitment to it, because if you're working with someone, then and you're pointing out their seeking and their suffering, they're going to get very reactive with you.
Yes. Oh,
And
tell
so
me about it.
the underlying like commitment. I mean, that's what India I think really does well.
Yeah.
Um, but there's lots of problems with the guru when it comes over to the West because of lack of understanding of it, you know. So then it gets into weird dynamics and then gets bad press.
Yeah.
Okay. But so how do you deal with that? The reactivity when you point out the stuff, but then them carrying on to commit to it.
Yeah. Good question. I feel that it also has a lot to do with the time that we are in now, like 2025. Like the era of the guru disciple is over and done. And I was speaking that when I first started speaking in Pune. I used to hold satsangs in Pune in 2004. 2003, 2004, I started holding satsangs in Pune. Many people came. It was full, and it was so beautiful because, as you say, it had that Indian flavor. So it was really the satsang setup. Very, very beautiful. And I was speaking that then because I was seeing that it had become available to anybody and everybody, and not just to the guru on the mountain or the guru in the cave. So for the ordinary human being to be able to recognize right here, right now, no matter who, this is was something new. You know, when I started giving these sessions in year 2000, it was something new to be able to bring someone just immediately into direct seeing. And but what was missing in that, and still often is the readiness to value what is recognized, the value of that, right? So I feel that unless we've come along a real journey, the recognition is easy, but the valuing of that is something else. So how much that is valued is going to determine how willing the ego self is going to bow down to that, right? So in our past times, that was the role of the guru disciple, is that the guru played the role of being there as a symbol of absolute truth. And the disciple, in recognizing that absolute truth, bowed down its ego self in service to something higher. So that role is very, very beautiful, and I lived through that journey myself. But I feel that it's going out. It's not of our times anymore, even if it's still around. It's not working. It's, we see a lot of being called out, because these kind of behaviors of no integration, and we're seeing a lot of that stuff. However, the message has now kind of come into the West and been made available much more easily. However, it's a very fine line, because the separate self getting the experience of direct recognition, recognizing I am that. So why should I'm the same as the teacher. I'm the same as there's nobody else. There's only an I am that. There can be, and there often is, coming along, because you know as well as I do, that even with this, what you call the energetic awakening, the small self-ego personality is always walking by the side, always walking along the side, waiting for the moment you're not looking to step in and re-identify, right? So when there is like say, for example, I have a room full of people and can bring everybody into direct realization, everybody there is with the eyes open, recognizing, yet there are different levels of valuing that or trying to own it and use it in service to the ego self. So then they want to, it happens, the reactivity, and they want to compete with you or show some kind of proof that they don't need you, which is, it's a bit like mummy daddy stuff, because there's the projection of mummy, their mummy daddy stuff. If it hasn't been worked through and played out and seen through and dropped, they're going to play it out with the teacher, and I see that a lot. And because of the times where, not just because, but alongside the times that we are in, and it being more and more available to wake up, if there's no maturity, there's no, as you call it, the energetic shift, there's no real, the drop drops into the ocean and the opening of the being. There is often still the identifying with the awakened position. And then they've got all the words, they've got the intellectual understanding, they've got all the right words, and now they want to challenge you because deep, deep, deep down, there's some unworthiness that hasn't been resolved. So now they've got to prove that they're worthy, and you are, if they can prove it with you, then they take their power. This is something that I see in the arena, one of the components. Yeah. I don't know if that answers what you asked.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, what I would call it is like the seeking energy, like coming back, and then they're seeking to be something. So they're seeking to be better than you or to have power. And what's so fascinating is it's so invisible to them. Like so, like they really project, I'm the same now as Ananta. Like I
Yeah.
had the same realization, and because they've because like you see, they've had that clear seeing, but it's just not been what I would say energetically integrated.
There's no integration.
Yeah.
And as you know, this needs integrating. You
Mm,
can't just have the experience and that's it. What about all the personality? Like, all the places where you've got all these like behaviors of manipulation, and that's why there's a lot of teachers being called out, right? Like, where we see sexual abuse or we see behaviors that are, and that's the new fashionable term, spiritual bypassing, has come about, is because of the tendency to go in the absolute and go into this absolute position of there's nobody here. There is nobody here, so there's nobody here to do anything wrong, and there's nobody here. That position doesn't integrate on the ground floor of daily life experience. It can be used in a denial. And
mm,
so what we're talking about when we say integration is when all of that gets updated by stepping into it with clear seeing in the way that we operate
mm,
on the ground floor, and
mm,
with qualities like honesty, absolute honesty. You just can't sneak and cheat and lie and all those things. Even if you say, well, there's nobody here, I didn't do that. It's not possible because there's no embodiment of this purity. It's like everything gets cleaned up, doesn't it? It's a
mm,
cleaning, an absolute cleaning. So the integration, I would say, is happening for the rest of their life.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I
that,
don't
and
like
I love you saying that, because that to me is like absolute humility. There's no position of like, I'm done, I'm finished. It's like I can endlessly expand. I can
exactly.
endlessly, I mean, I don't want to say
I don't
improve, but I
claim,
mean,
yeah,
yeah.
I don't claim to be, I don't think anybody's finished.
Mm. Have arrived.
Yeah, like on the human level, there's always like to remain, what was it Papaji said?
Mm,
Remain vigilant until the last breath,
mm,
right? When he was asked, do you still need to remain vigilant? He said, until the last breath.
mm.
You know, there's, I don't claim to be, oh, it's all over and done and da 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 da. There's no work.
Yeah. I love the way that you're saying this, just so for the people that are listening, because they're used to listening to me, I say it in a different language, but I totally resonate and totally feel like it's the same, very similar, but it's just different ways of saying it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
Very
what makes
beautiful.
us unique. And I love the way you express as well. Like
Mm,
it's fascinating. Like I watch you and go, wow, wow, No, really, because it's so unique, and that's the
mm.
beauty,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's so unique. Yeah, nice. I think maybe we should come to an end again. Maybe there is more. We've talked about doing a live stream together and doing questions, but maybe there's more we do, after we put it out and we see how people respond.
Yeah.
But yeah, what have you got coming up? Like what is there people how can people interact and work with you?
Well, as you know, I have a retreat coming up, but I don't know whether this will be viewed before. But that's
Yeah, I
yeah,
think so. I think so. I'll put it out in a couple of weeks.
yeah. Well, that's happening in a month from now.
Mm.
in Portugal. I'm in the Algarve right now, and my life is not sorted out, you know, just for anyone listening. I don't have all my life sorted out. Not at all, you know. I'm still looking for a place to settle, physical home, da da da. And I have an online Sangha, an online Living Awake group, membership group, an intimate group where we meet regularly every couple of weeks. And we have an ongoing intimate exploration and support. And I offer sessions and containers for people who want to really invest in a real intimate, in-depth journey together over months. And I've been feeling recently, like for the right person, you know, that I would do individual retreats, you know, but with the right application. Have to be a real alignment, not for anybody. And yeah, I run retreats at least a couple of times a year. And
I think that's really beautiful to do individual ones. I've often thought about that and thought about working with like some form of yoga or bodywork teacher as well.
yeah,
I think this could be really, really powerful, and especially because you are often in such beautiful, spacious countries
yeah.
like Portugal.
I've done it before. I've done
Mm,
amazing individual.
yeah,
Yeah,
because people are so. I mean, one thing that surprises me, like I like a lot of silence on retreats, and just in person, I like a lot of silence. I
yeah.
noticed that that's really challenging for a lot of people, you know. But before I got into non-duality, I was practicing Buddhist, so I was so used to going on to silent retreats and being in silence.
Exactly.
And so to do these like individual retreats where you really have to face yourself in silence, but you've got somebody that's guiding you and helping you to keep that commitment,
Yeah,
really beautiful.
yeah. It's very beautiful and tailored to
Mm,
the particular person's
yeah.
level and ability. And no, it's
Mm.
very, very, very beautiful. And yeah, there's as you were speaking, there's something um yeah, the silence. You know, all my retreats are in silence. There's only
The whole
talking.
thing.
Yeah, the whole thing.
Mm.
The only talking is in the sessions, which are very intense, you know, which you might get. I mean, I'm kind of intense. Um, um, yeah, so they're all in silence, and it really, really, I can't believe, you know, it was like being in prison. You're waiting for the guards not to look to whisper, and how they just want to chat.
Yeah,
It's just like,
yeah.
you know,
My events where there's speaking are more popular.
really.
Yeah. If I put silence on the less popular.
Wow, amazing. Perhaps there should be like a couple of hours where they can go and
Yeah.
I'll consider that.
I think it's also because, and I partly understand it. So I do that. I have hours where people can speak for a couple of hours on some
Ah,
days.
I've never
But
done that. I'm
I think
strict.
it's,
I'm like a prison guard.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's because that often people are very isolated. So when they go on retreat,
Ah,
they they want to meet other like-minded people.
right.
You know, they're very isolated. You know, they've not like us that, you know, in our 20s, we were traveling, we were going on retreats, we were meeting so many people in this, you know, especially in India, you know, in Pune, um, yeah, in Thailand, so many spiritual people. Whereas a lot of people that come on retreats, you know, are living a 9 to 5 job with a family.
Ah,
And so they don't have the opportunity to speak about that. So then
good
to go on
point.
retreat and meet like-minded people and then
Yeah.
be in
And
silence,
I'm
they're like,
like, you're gonna get
yeah,
punished.
yeah. But
You're gonna be
not all
sitting
of them.
there.
There's some that aren't like that. But yeah, there's
No,
some.
yeah, no, it's good. It's a
Mm,
good point. Yeah, thank you. I will consider that. Yeah.
yeah.
And often, like the retreat I've got coming up in next month, it's non-residential. So they get their own Airbnbs around the villa that I've rented. So they can actually meet in the evening and do whatever. I'm
Yeah.
not, I'm not
Yeah.
walking around the
Yeah.
Algarve like watching them, looking through their windows or anything like that.
Yeah. But I
Yeah.
think it's such a beautiful thing to do a silent retreat. Like, if anybody has got time at Easter and wants to do a silent retreat, like, go for it with Ananta. It's just such a beautiful thing to do. It blew my mind, like learning how to be in silence. It was such
Wow.
an important part in my early 20s. I was so uncomfortable in silence and
Wow.
not having something to do, to learn how to be
Right.
silent
Oh,
and
I
not do
loved it.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
I was, when I got out of jail, I was like, oh, now I got to hear them all. Do you know what I mean? I didn't have to listen to them. I could hear it in the silence, the thoughts and stuff, but now I've got to actually listen to all those, and that's secretly why I put it inside. I don't want to listen to them. Yeah. But of course, also I have like, I don't know, 500 videos on my YouTube channel and no, my not as popular as yours. It's like not many people know about me, I think. Yeah, it's I don't know. I think that there really is something in how this whole thing works. You've got to be ready. I think that the message that I bring and the thing that I invite is really, it can be quite confronting because it's deep, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really,
And like you say, your personality is very
yeah,
intense.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
sometimes when I struggle with boundaries, my boundaries are getting so much better. Like, I've really had a breakthrough with that. But sometimes when I struggle with them, I think, what would Ananta do here? Honestly, like, I use like the image, like, how would Ananta respond?
And then when you get the imagination of that, do you act on it?
I just it helps. It's like what Khaleesi used to do for me as well. Khaleesi was really fierce. It's like an energetic thing. Like, imagining how you would respond. Like, no, like just your firmness. Like, but my boundaries are getting so much better now. I've really worked on that the last 10 years.
Wow. Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah, you've grown so much because I mean I've seen your stuff for 10 years easy. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's what we're talking about. It's like it's this deepening and deepening and deepening, and this is endless revelation,
Mm.
it's such a beautiful, beautiful thing. And before we started and before we end, before we were on camera, you asked me to say something about you wanted to open up the door of how sexuality
Yeah,
can be. Do you want to ask about that still? Or?
I think we now
Oh,
done
we're
an
at the
hour.
hour.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
we're over an hour.
Oh, are
I
we?
think we're at like an hour and 15. So I think maybe that's another.
Yeah.
I would love to talk about non-duality and sexuality. Um, yeah, and feminine energy, and I would love all of that. So yeah,
Okay.
might be another video, another live stream, or
Okay.
yeah, and
Yeah,
we
we
can
could
see
do
what people
something like.
comment, like ask, like how they feel, what they would like.
Yeah. Would people like to attend a live with questions or
Yeah,
something like that?
yeah,
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lisa. You're so
yeah.
generous in the space you offer. I really feel that. Mm.
Mm. Oh, thanks, Ananta. Oh, I've loved it. Yeah, yeah. I loved it. Yeah, and I love having this friendship.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. Really valued. Really. Because I have found, I don't know about you, there's not many, I don't have a lot of friends that I can relate with on this level.
Mm. Totally find that too.
Mm. Mm. So it's greatly appreciated.
Yeah. And I just felt to say, you said you are looking to settle. Like, just because there's a wide audience, and I know there's a big audience in Portugal, and you are looking to settle in Portugal. So I just thought to say that, if anyone else has got any contacts or ideas, yeah, they could
Yeah,
contact you as
I'm
well.
also, it doesn't have to be Portugal, you know. I
Yeah.
feel like it can be, I'm feeling that more and more because there are many reasons because it's so spread out here. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it'd be great to have some contacts here that know of something, but I'm also open to wherever. I just really need a landing place now
Yeah.
at this point in their life, you know?
Yeah.
Mm. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Ananta. Okay, so I stop recording now. Yeah, and thank you everyone listening.
Mm.
Bye.